going to be another few pages. And of course, we are on page 27. I'm going to go ahead and start where Bilbo Baggins called it a party. Okay, so let's see. So let's see how far I can really get. I have my ears on. If you need to put your ears on, fine. Put your ears on. Let's see. Well, Bilbo Baggins called it a party, but it was really a variety of entertainments rolled into one. Practically everybody living near was invited. A very few were overlooked by accident, but as they turned up all the same, that did not matter. Many people from other parts of the Shire were also asked, and there were even a few from outside the borders. Bilbo met the guests and additions at the new White Gate in person. He gave away presents to all and sundry. The latter were those who went out again by a back way and came in again by the gate. The hobbits give presents to other people on their own birthdays. Not very expensive ones, as a rule, and not so lavishly as on this occasion. But it was not a bad system. Actually, in Hobbiton and Bywater, every day in the year was somebody's birthday, so that everybody hobbit in those parts had a fair chance of at least one present, at least once a week. But they never got tired of them. On this occasion, the presents were unusually good. The Hobbit children were so excited that for a while they almost forgot about eating. There were toys the like of which they had never seen before, all beautiful and some obviously magical. Many of them had indeed been ordered a year before and had come all the way from the mountain and from Dale and were of real dwarf make. When every guest had been welcomed and was finally inside the gate, there were songs, dances, music, games, and, of course, food and drink. There were 3 official meals: lunch, tea, and dinner, or supper. But lunch and tea were marked chiefly by the fact that at those times all the guests were sitting down and eating together. At other times there were merely lots of people eating and drinking continuously from 11 from until 6:30 when the fireworks started. The fireworks were by Gandalf, and they were not only brought by him, but designed and made by him. And the special effects, set pieces, and flights of rockets were let off by him, but there was also a generous distribution of squibs, crackers, tobacco wrappers, sparklers, torches, dwarf candles, elf fountains, goblin barkers, and thunderclaps. They were all superb. The art of Gandalf improved with age. There were rockets like a flight of scintillating birds singing with sweet voices. There were green trees with trunks of dark smoke. Their leaves opened like a whole spring, unfolding in a moment. And their shining branches dropped glowing flowers down upon the astonished hobbits, disappearing with a sweet scent just before they touched their upturned faces. There were fountains of butterflies that flew glittering into the trees. There were pillars of colored fires that rose and turned into eagles, or sailing ships, or phalanx of flying swans. There was a red thunderstorm and a shower of yellow rain. There was a forest of silver spears that sprang suddenly into the air with a yell like an embattled army, and came down again into the water with a hiss like 100 hot snakes. And there was also one last surprise in honor of Bilbo, and it startled the hobbits exceedingly, as Gandalf intended. The lights went out. A great smoke went up. It shaped itself like a mountain seen in the distance and began to glow at the summit. It sprouted green and scarlet flames. Out flew a red golden dragon. Not life-size, but terribly lifelike. Fire came from his jaws. His eyes glared down, and there was a roar. And he whizzed 3 times over the heads of the crowd. They all ducked, and many fell flat on their faces. The dragon passed like an express train, turned a somersault, and burst over Bywater with a deafening explosion. "That is the signal for supper," said Bilbo. The pain and alarm vanished at once, and the prostrate hobbits leaped to their feet. There was a splendid supper for everyone, that is, except those invited to the special family dinner party. This was held in the great pavilion with the tree. The invitations were limited to 12 dozen, a number called by the hobbits one gross, though the word was not considered proper to use of people, and the guests related, with the addition of a few unrelated friends such as Gandalf. Many young hobbits were included and present by parental permission. For hobbits were easygoing with their children in the matter of sitting up late, especially when there was a chance of getting them a free meal. So bringing up young hobbits took a lot of provender. There were many Bagginses and Boffins, and also many Tooks and Brandybucks. There were various Grubs, relations of Bilbo Baggins, grandmother, and various Shubs, connections of his Took grandfather, and a selection of Burrowses, Bolgers, Brace Girdles, and Brock houses, and good bodies, Hornblowers, and Proudfoots. Some of these were only very distantly connected with Bilbo, and some had also ever been in Hobbiton before, as they lived in remote corners of the Shire. The Sackville Magnuses were not forgotten. Otho and his wife, Lobelia, were present. They disliked Bilbo and detested Frodo, but so magnificent was the invitation card written in golden ink that they had felt it was impossible to refuse. Besides, their cousin Bilbo had been specializing in food for many years, and his table had a high reputation. And all the 144 guests expected a pleasant feast, though they rather dreaded the after-dinner speech of their host, an inedible item. He was liable to drag in bits of what he called poetry, and sometimes, after a glass or two, would allude to the absurd adventures of his mysterious journey. The guests were not disappointed. They had a very pleasant feast. In fact, an engrossing entertainment, rich, abundant, varied, and prolonged. The purchase of provisions fell almost to nothing throughout the district and the ensuing weeks. But as Bilbo's catering had depleted the stocks of most of the stores, cellars, and warehouses for miles around, that did not matter much. After the feast, more or less, came the speech. Most of the company were, however, now in a tolerant mood. At that delightful stage, which they called filing up the corners, they were sipping their favorite drinks and nibbling at their favorite dainties, and their fears were forgotten. They were prepared to listen to anything and to cheer at every full stop. My dear people, began Bilbo, rising in his place. Hear, 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 they shouted, and kept on repeating it in chorus, seeming reluctant to follow their own advice. Bilbo left his place and went and stood on a chair under the illuminated tree. The light of the lanterns fell on his beaming face. The golden buttons shone on his embroidered silk waistcoat. They could all see him standing, waving one hand in the air. The other was in his trouser pocket. My dear Bagginses and Boffins, he began again, and my dear Tooks and Brandybucks and Grubs and Chubs and Burrowses and Honey Blowers and Bolgers and Brace Girdles, Good Bodies, Rock Houses, and Proudfoots. Proud feet! Somebody shouted an elderly hobbit from the back of the pavilion. His name, of course, was Proudfoot, and well merited. His feet were large, exceptionally furry, and both were on the table. Proudfoot's repeated Bilbo. Also, my good Sackville Bagnesses, that I welcome back at last to Baggin. Today is my 111th birthday. I am 111 today. Hooray, hooray, hooray. Many happy returns, they shouted. And they hammered joyously on the tables. Bilbo was doing splendidly. This was the sort of stuff they liked, short and obvious. I hope you all are all enjoying yourselves as much as I am. Deafening cheers, cries of yes and no, noises of trumpets and horns, pipes and flutes, and other musical instruments. There were, as has been said, many young hobbits present. Hundreds of musical crackers had been pulled. Most of them bore the mark Dale on them, which did not convey much to most of the hobbits, but they all agreed they were marvelous crackers. They contained instruments, small but of perfect make and enchanting tones. Indeed, in one corner, some of the young tooks and brandy bucks, supposing Uncle Bilbo to have finished, since he had plainly said all that was necessary, now got up an impromptu orchestra and began a merry dance tune. Master Everard took and Miss Melilot Brandybuck got on a table and with bells in their hands began to dance in Springle Ring, a pretty dance, but rather vigorous. But Bilbo had not finished. Seizing a horn from a youngster nearby, he blew 3 loud hoots, and the noise subsided. "I shall not keep you long," he cried. "Cheers from all the assembly. I have called you all together for a purpose." Something in the way that he said this made an impression. There was almost silence, and 1 or 2 of the tooks pricked up their ears. "Indeed, for 3 purposes. First of all, to tell you that I am immensely fond of you all, and that 1 years is too short a time to live among such excellent and admirable hobbits." Tremendous outbursts of approval. "I don't know half of you, half as well as I should like. And I like less than half of you, half as well as you deserve." This was unexpected and rather difficult. There was some scattered clapping, but most of them were trying to work it out and see if it came to a compliment. "Secondly, to celebrate my birthday," cheers again, "I should say our birthday, for it is, of course, also the birthday of my heir and nephew, Frodo. He comes of age and into his inheritance today." Some perfunctory clapping by the elders, and some shouts of "Frodo, Frodo, jolly old Frodo," from his juniors. The Sackville Bagginses scowled and wondered what was meant by coming into his inheritance. Together we score 144. Your numbers were chosen to fit this remarkable total. One grows, if I may use the expression. No cheers. This was ridiculous. Many of the guests, and especially the Sackville Bagginses, were insulted, feeling sure that they had only been asked to fill up the required number like goods in a package. One gross indeed vulgar expression. It is also, if I may be allowed to refer to ancient history, the anniversary of my arrival by Beryl and Edgar's Roth on the Long Lake. Although the fact that it was my birthday slipped my memory on that occasion. I was only 51 then, and birthdays did not seem so important. The banquet was very splendid. However, though I had a bad cold at the time, I remember Anne could only say thank you very much. I now repeat it correctly. Thank you very much for coming to my little party. Obstinate silence. They all feared that a song or some poetry was now imminent, and they were getting bored. Why could he stop talking and let them drink his health? But Bilbo did not sing or recite. He paused for a moment. Thirdly and finally, he asked, I wish to make an announcement. He spoke this last word so loudly and suddenly that everyone sat up who still could. I regret to announce that though, as I said, 11 years is far too short a time to spend among you, this is the end. I am going. I am leaving. Now, goodbye. He stepped down and vanished. There was a blinding flash of light, and all guests blinked. When they opened their eyes, Bilbo was nowhere to be seen. 144 flabbergasted hobbits sat back speechless. Old Odo Proudfoot removed his feet from the table and stamped. There was a dead silence until suddenly, after several deep breaths, every Baggins, Bulfin, took Brandybuck, Grub, Chub, Burrows, Bolger, Bracegirdle, Brockhouse, Goodbody, Hornblower, and Proudfoot began to talk at once. It was generally agreed that the junk was in very bad taste, and more food and drink were needed to cure the guests of shock and annoyance. He's mad. I always said so. Was probably the most popular comment. Even the Tooks, with a few exceptions, thought Bilbo's behavior was absurd. For the moment, most of them took it for granted that his disappearance was nothing more than ridiculous. Oh, yeah. Ear miss out. So for the moment, most of them took it for granted that his disappearance was nothing more than a ridiculous prank. But old Rory Brandenburg was not so sure. Neither age nor an enormous dinner had clouded his wits. And he said to his daughter-in-law, Esmeralda, there's something fishy in this, my dear. I believe that Mad Baggins is off again. Silly old fool. But why worry? He hasn't taken the victuals with him. He called loudly to Frodo to send the wine around again. Frodo was the only one present who had said nothing. For some time he sat silent beside Bilbo's empty chair and ignored all remarks and questions. He had enjoyed the joke, of course, even though he had been in the know. He had difficulty in keeping from laughter at the indignant surprise of the guests. But at the same time, he felt deeply troubled. He realized suddenly that he loved the old hobbit dearly. Most of the guests went on eating and drinking and discussing Bilbo Baggins' oddities, past and present. But the Sackville Bagginses had already departed in wrath. Frodo did not want to have any more to do with the party. He gave orders for more wine to be served, and then he got up and drained his own glass silently to the health of Bilbo and slipped out of the pavilion. As for Bilbo Baggins, even while he was making his speech, he had been fingering the golden ring in his pocket. His magic ring that he had kept secret for so many years. As he stepped down, he slipped it on his fingers, and he never seen any hobbit in Hobbitown again. He walked briskly back to his home and stood for a moment listening with a smile to the din of the pavilion and to the sounds of merrymaking in other parts of the field. Then he went on. He took off his party clothes, folded up, and wrapped in tissue paper his embroidered silk waistcoat and put it away. Then he put on quickly some old tidy garments and fastened around his waist a worn leather belt. On it he hung a short sword and a battered black leather scabbard. From a locked drawer, smelling of mothballs, he took out an old cloak and hood. They had been locked up as if they were very precious, but they were so patched and weather-stained that the original color could hardly be guessed. It might have been dark green. They were rather too large for him. And then he went into his study and from a large, strong box took out a bundle wrapped in cloths and leather bound manuscript and also a large bulky envelope. The book and bundle he stuffed into the top of a heavy bag that was standing there, already nearly full. Into the envelope he slipped his golden ring and his fine chain and then sealed it and addressed it to Frodo. At first he put it on the mantelpiece, but suddenly he removed it and stuck it in his pocket. At that moment the door opened and Gandalf came quickly in. "Hello," said Bilbo. "I wondered if you would turn up." "I am glad to find you visible," replied the wizard, sitting down in a chair. "I wanted to catch you and have a few final words. I suppose you feel that everything has gone off splendidly and according to plan?" "Yes, I do," said Bilbo. Though that flash was surprising, it was quite startled me, let alone the others. "A little addition of your own, I suppose?" "It was." You have wisely kept that ring secret all these years, and it seemed to me necessary to give your guest something else that would seem to explain your sudden banishment and would spoil my joke. You are an interfering old busybody, laughed Bilbo, but I expect you know best as usual. I did, when I know anything, but I don't feel too sure about this whole affair. It was now come to the final point that you have had your joke and alarmed or offended most of your relations and given the whole Shire something to talk about for 9 years. Are 99 more likely? Are you going any further? Yes, I am. I feel I need a holiday. A very long holiday. As I had told you before, probably a permanent holiday. I don't expect I shall return. In fact, I don't mean to, and I have made all arrangements. I am old Gandalf. I don't look at it, but I am beginning to feel it in my heart of hearts. Well preserved indeed, he snorted. Why, I feel all thin, sort of stretched, if you know what I mean, like butter that has been scraped over too much bread. That can't be right. I need a change or something. Gandalf looked curiously and closely at him. No, it does not seem right, he said thoughtfully. No, after all, I believe your plan is probably the best. Well, I have made up my mind anyway. I want to see mountains again, Gandalf. Mountains. And then find somewhere where I can rest. In peace and quiet without a lot of relatives prying around. And a string of confounded visitors hanging on the bell. I might find somewhere where I can finish my book. I have thought of a nice ending for it. And he lived happily ever after to the end of his days. Gandalf laughed. I hope he will. But nobody will read the book, however it ends. Oh, they may in years to come. Frodo has read some already, and far as it has gone, you'll keep an eye on Frodo, won't you? Yes, I will. 2 eyes as often as I could spare them. He would come with me, of course, if I asked him. In fact, he offered to once, just before the party. But he does not really want to yet. I want to see the wild country again before I die. And the mountains, but he is still in love with the Shire. With woods and fields and little rivers, he ought to be comfortable here. I am leaving everything to him, of course, except a few oddments. I hope he will be happy. When he gets used to being on his own, it's time to be on his own master now. Yeah, it's time. It's time he was his own master now. Everything, said Gandalf. The ring was as well. You agreed to that. You remember? Well, yes, I suppose so, stammered Bilbo. Where is it? In an envelope, if you must know. Bilbo impatiently. There on the mantelpiece. Well, ho, no. Here it is in my pocket. He hesitated. Isn't that odd, Neil? He said softly to himself. Yet, after all, why not? Why shouldn't it stay there? Gandalf looked again, very hard, at Bilbo. There was a gleam in his eye, I think. Bilbo, said, he said quietly, I should leave it behind. Don't you want to? Well, yes and no. Now it comes to it, I don't like parting with it at all, I may say. And I don't really see why I should. Why do you want me to? He asked. And a curious change came over his voice. It was sharp with suspicion and annoyance. You are always badgering me about my ring. But you have never bothered me about the other things that I got on my journey. No, but I had to badger you, said Gandalf. I wanted the truth. It was important. Magic rings are, well, magical. And they are rare and curious. I was professionally, excuse me, interested in your ring, you may say, and I still am. I should like to know where it is. If you go wandering again. Also, I think you have had it quite long enough. You won't need it anymore, Bilbo, unless I am quite mistaken. Bilbo flushed, and there was an angry light in his eyes. His kindly face grew hard. Why not? He cried. And what business is it of yours? Anyway, to know what I do in my own things. It is my own. I found it. It came to me. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. On page 34. So let's see. We've got a few more pages for it for a long expected party. Excuse me. Which will lead us to chapter 11, The Shadow of the Past. So we're going to go ahead and stop here for now. And I will go ahead and mark it at page 34 and start again. Okay. Later, people. Good night.